Welcome to a layout planning video. The North Downs Model Railway Circle is thinking of building a shunting layout, and this is a mock-up of the Welsh Valleys colliery scenario. Starting at the Fiddle Yard, we have 4 sidings here. These represent both the interchange sidings to the Great Western, but they also represent another colliery, Cwm Bwll. More of that later. The other things in the Fiddle Yard are an extension of the wagon works to get more wagons in. Similarly, an extension of the loader, both of which I will go into further, and the Great Western line. This is going to be operated by an auto shuttle unit, and the train will run up to the halt where there's a waiting shelter. Obviously the piece of timber is just standing in for a platform. Similarly, these two are standing in for station building, parcels office, all that sort of thing. This is because technically it's not a halt, it's a platform, so it'll be staffed. The staff will also operate the ground frame that controls this crossover. Going back to the Fiddle Yard and running into the scenic section, first of all you see a length of narrow gauge track. This is basically there to hide the break between the Fiddle Yard and the scenic section. It'll feed a loader represented by these 2 bits of timber. It could load iron, limestone, coal, slack, shale, burnt shale, practically anything. You then got the Great Western line. Behind that you would have a wagon works and a small engine shed, and these 2 would hide the colliery's link to the Fiddle Yard. There'd be a short straight section there to get stock onto the scenic board. A point, I can't put that in place because of the crane. It would split into a loop, back and back siding. The first would be a weighbridge. Wagons will weigh going out obviously, but also coming in, because the coal trade was rather prone to overestimating the weight of its empty wagons. The next thing, which I'm starting to have doubts about, is a coal dump. This is because the colliery is twinned with a power station, and the power station needs coal not only from the colliery but also from other collieries because of cost, ash content, and so forth. Behind that is the dump for the coke works. Lump coke goes down this spout into wagons, whereas small coke, called coke breeze, is just dropped through a hole in the floor. Another thing you wouldn't quite expect these days is the colliery has a workman's service from here to the other colliery, because that hasn't got any road access. Because miners were fit, platforms were often not provided. What I would do is I would raise the ballast here up to rail height, possibly use a different colour of ballast to try and make it stand out a bit more. Moving on, we have a short siding here which would be used to sell local coal locally. with some huts and lockups and things as office and storage for the coal retailers. Behind that is the briquetting plant. This takes small coal, basically glues it together, and then turning it into something more valuable. It, from a model railway perspective, explains why there's wagons coming in, both bringing raw materials needed and shipping out bagged briquettes. With a bit of care, that could probably be extended round to there. We then come to the screen. You get 3 sidings here on a ramp. Each siding can hold about 5 wagons or so. What happens is the wagons are pushed up the ramp. They're lowered by by gravity. In this case, held in place by these. The other possibility would be a wire coming up through the baseboard. To make the Great Western Line a little more interesting operationally, there's a small goods shed. Bit questionable. I have seen goods sheds on running lines are fairly unusual in the UK, but did happen. There was one in the Forest of Dean. And then the last thing is, rather than just coming to an end with buffers or whatnot, there's actually a stone, probably sandstone quarry loading onto the Great Western. This would have a narrow gauge which would ideally dive under the colliery's sidings. I have doubts about the headroom, I must admit, so it might just have to be a cutting or similar, and a little narrow gauge loco would basically shuttle up and down, controlled by a shuttle unit. Hopefully together this will provide a great deal of interest both to the public and to the operator. And I hope this use of a mock-up of a potential layout shows how useful mock-ups can be. It certainly has shown some ideas I had didn't work and has produced more